I dropped out in year 10, so I didn't get to do those high level sort of English and maths, although I was quite a good student. Maths and English were my best subjects. So going in to just going, oh, all right, hang on, I'm just going to enrol in an advanced diploma in accounting and just do it. Yeah, it was quite confronting. But back then I think it was better because we had face-to-face. And I've started, trying to finish my MBA at the moment, and it's all online and it's very difficult. It's much more difficult now going back in the last few years than it was back then.
Welcome to The Glass Ceiling, the podcast where business leaders share their stories, struggles and triumphs.
There is a lot in that. There's a lot of learning.
We sort of had different views on how the business should be ran.
The next 10 years looks like for South Australia.
It's the easiest. I'm your host, Marissa Hankinson from Wavebreaker, and I'm passionate about amplifying their voices. Join me as we explore the highs and lows of innovation, entrepreneurship and leadership. From founders to CEOs, our guests will share their insights, experiences and advice on how to succeed and make a lasting impact. Get ready for inspiring conversations and valuable lessons. Let's shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time.
Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Look no further than Next Workspace. Located on level 15, 45 Pirie Street, our incredible facilities offer everything you need to thrive, from comfortable workspaces to cutting-edge technology and amenities. Plus, our collaborative community will help you connect with like-minded professionals, share ideas and learn from each other's experiences. With flexible workspaces, meeting rooms and event spaces, you'll have everything you need to grow your business. And with our supportive community, you'll never be far from inspiration, motivation or a helping hand. At Next Workspace, we're more than just an office, we're a community for innovation and creativity. Join us today and watch your business soar. Next Workspace, empowering your success. Visit us at www.nextworkspace.au.
Well, welcome to season 2 of The Glass Ceiling. Can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Hi Marissa, thank you. My name's Sarah Reimann. I am a virtual CFO, which means that I help businesses with all the fun stuff, the numbers and the cash flow and the budgets and knowing where their money's coming from and knowing where their money is going to. I was an accountant for 14 years and I also now do some professional speaking.
Great stuff. So what is your business called?
My business is The Confident Woman. However, I don't just work with women.
Good.
That's just a company name that I liked, but I'm a thought leader. Sarah Reimann is my business. So, yeah.
Great. And how long have you been running Sarah Reimann?
Since 2018, when I decided to leave my accounting career behind.
So was there anything that sort of was the catalyst for that change?
Yeah, so back in about 2017, we had a business coach in our accounting firm who was just helping us with all the stuff. Me and my husband are in business together. We had been for probably 10 to 12 years. And after a few months, she just said to me, she said, Sarah, I don't know why you're still here and why you're still doing this work, because you don't like it. You hate it. Oh. Tax returns, BAS, GST, all the things that tax accountants do that we all know and love, and of course we need them. And, she said, you want to be a speaker, you want to be a consultant and a coach, just go do it, just really just go do it. And that's what, was the straw that broke the camel's back, I suppose. I just really thought, I've just been fluffing around trying to keep this business together, which, it's a hard thing to admit that the career that you've studied for and been in the business you've been in for 14 years, you now no longer like. Okay. And that's a hard decision to come to, I suppose. And then, of course, let down all the clients that you've been working with for all those years too.
So did the business actually close?
No. So I just went to my husband one day and I said, look, I hate this work. I just don't want to keep filling in forms, doing tax returns and dealing with this stuff. I want to help businesses with all the other stuff and all the other problems and issues they're facing. And I don't feel like I can if I stay here. And thankfully, my husband, who's very supportive, said, well, we'll just hire someone to replace you. I mean, we were a decent firm, we had 4 or 5 staff, so it's not like we just could shut. And so that's what we did. We just hired someone to take my place and off I went and started into doing consulting work.
So from that, did you have to do some additional training and qualifications? What did you do to?
Not qualifications, I guess. The first thing I wanted to do was learn how to speak. So I felt like I was being drawn to being like a speaker, and I thought I've got to get good at speaking in front of people, because I knew that if I wanted to change career, I had to be able to get my message across about what I did in a confident way. And I probably wasn't the most confident person back then. You know, one-on-one I might have been, but if I got up in front of 200 or 300 people, I probably froze. So qualification, I suppose I joined the Professional Speakers Association and just went and did their courses and learnt how to speak. I already had an accounting degree, so I didn't, and I'd worked with hundreds of businesses anyway in that capacity, so I didn't need to go and get the things I probably needed to learn was speaking, sales, marketing, all the other stuff accountants don't get taught. So I went and did that. Yeah.
Okay. So from wanting to help and go for the bigger picture, was part of that around businesses are coming to you and you were being more reactive to their situations rather than being proactive? Was there something around that space? Was there a scenario where you knew you could have helped a client and that opportunity just hadn't arisen?
Yeah, so I did. Over the years, lots of businesses came to me and, you know, they didn't understand the difference between cash flow and profit. They didn't sort of understand that, you know, you have to save for taxes, or as we know, if you get behind 1 year, then you're behind 3, aren't you?
Yeah.
So just things like that, or not understanding why they had a tax bill, or not understanding, or they felt like they weren't making money, but didn't know why, or they were making profits, but it didn't reflect in the bank account. So all these sort of questions were put to me, but because, again, I was caught up in compliance and just giving them a tax return, talking about history, I actually didn't have the time. I just did not have the time. And so it was either sort of stay in that business, try and do both, which I did for a while, and I just realised it just wasn't working, or just quit that altogether and go, all right, these guys need help with a higher level type. We need to be looking at the future and being proactive on these decisions, not wait until, hang on, now I've got $100,000 tax bill and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Let's prevent that from happening and plan ahead.
So what kind of clients do you actually work with now? What's been the change?
Mainly professional services. However, I would work with bigger tradie or construction business if they were a bit bigger, but, you know, marketing, IT, HR, even non-profits. You know, I work with a number of non-profits that are in like the social impact space, because again, they've got to have budgets. They've got finite type of grants or resources, and they need to have budgets, and lots of them don't understand or know how to keep track of that. And so they get the grant and they just go, we can just spend it. And I'm like, yeah, but you still got to keep track of where it's going. So yeah, lots of people in the service industry, NDIS, I work with a lot of those because they need business plans, strategic plans.
NDIS is just such a huge sector.
Yeah.
It's just like over the last 4 years, it just seems to be, every new business seems to be in the NDIS space, but there's a lot of compliance in that. And there's a lot of things they have to evidence. Do you get involved in that element, or?
Not the audit, but I get involved in terms of they need a business plan or a strategic. So last week I did a full day with an NDIS company, just 2 girls that ran it. Mind you, they've got 50 staff, 50 support workers, and you call it a small business, but and it still is. But they just came to me and said, look, we have to do a business plan for this registration that they're getting, and we don't know how to do it. So we just spent a whole day unpacking mission, vision, values, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, and just unpacking the whole stuff around the business. And then I put that into a business plan, and then we go ongoing consulting from there.
It's actually frightening when you say 2 women running a business, they've got 50 support workers, but they've never had a business plan. How did they even get?
I know. Sounds scary.
It just doesn't. It sounds really scary. It's like, how is that actually operating without necessarily the foundation or the fundamentals of where? Or I think there's an element of that with the NDIS, that there is so much demand that it just explodes.
That's what happens.
And then I'm sure you see consequences on the other side of that explosion.
Because they get to a certain point, and I always say to them, you might have got to 1 million or 2 million or 3 million, but what got you there isn't going to get you to, if you've got a plan to go to 6 million or double, it's not, what you've done now is not going to get you to that next level, because you'll have a growth trajectory in the first few years, which they have, but you're probably going to plateau unless you start to really put systems in place that can support that, because I've seen that go really wrong. People just get so big. Systems, tech, software, it just can't cope, or the people don't have the skills and it can break and they can lose 50% income overnight.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about the systems and processes, because sometimes a lot of people think it's just more staff that they have to add on, but actually you can get more efficiencies. So do you partner with other businesses to help you in that space?
Yeah, so if I can see that a business is sort of outgrowing system, let's call, I mean, I'm no IT specialist, but let's say they may have grown out of something like Xero or MyOb or QuickBooks, which are really for small business. You know, that's accounting software for small business. There isn't a lot of options in between the gap of sort of small, medium, and then we jump to large and we start talking about ERP systems, which are 100,000 a year. And a lot of still small business, they've got 50, 100 staff. They're still not in that space where they can probably
No, there isn't that
afford
middle ground.
So I do try and get, you know, IT or get other software experts to come in and go, all right, well, we can probably add on here for payroll, or we can add something onto your existing system, because it's better for those people to sort of bed down what they've got, just go, look, we're not taking on any more clients until we not fix, but maintain or make sure those systems can cope with the volume that potentially can come in.
So I have seen you MC and be on the keynote speaker circuit. Is this what you talk about when you are talking on stage, or do you take a different approach? Because not everybody's going to be going to a business seminar or be in the need for your services. So do you have different strings to Sarah's bow, as they say, with because obviously the confident woman has come from something.
Yeah.
So where did that originate from?
That originated from I read a book once called The Confident Woman, and I'm just like, I'm going to call my company that, because it was more for what I wanted to become back then. So that company's probably nearly 10 years old, but that's who I wanted to become, because maybe at the time I felt like I wasn't a confident woman, and that's what I was aspiring to, but also to inspire other women. So I generally have 3 topics, Marissa, that I talk about. One of them is obviously around finance and cash flow and profits and getting all your numbers right if you're not a numbers person, business, and putting it into terms, just like we're talking about today, that's not jargony, and ways that people can understand, and just sharing stories of clients that have perhaps either done really well or what not to do. Yeah. So I do that, and around strategy and why a business plan, because a lot of small business, as you said, don't even have a plan. They're just like, hey, we're just going to open a business, hit the ground running. Now we're at 3 million. What do we do now? Yeah. And it is a scary thing, but perhaps they've done really well despite the fact they haven't. But I still feel like a plan and having that sort of purpose around your business, those businesses definitely do better than the ones that kind of just wing it, or they grow and they get better. The other topic I actually talk about is my story of overcoming domestic violence, divorce, depression, anxiety in years gone by. And normally I do that to a group of women. However, I have been known to do it to business groups as well, because they just want to hear a motivational, inspiring story of someone that's gone from nothing to something.
Okay. So, And interestingly enough, with Fair Work, there is, domestic violence policies in place. There are things that are being introduced into the workplace now. So a business group, I can understand, would take quite a lot out of that. So did you feel like you had an element of imposter syndrome when you first started your business? Am I allowed to ask that?
I think I mean, even I was at a group last week, and even thinking back to when I started as an accountant, so I was a high school dropout. I didn't even finish year 10, right?
Oh, wow.
Left school at 16, left home at 16. I was the effervescent rebel, right? But then I decided to go.
Doesn't look like it. It doesn't. I'm trying to imagine.
So I didn't go back to study until I was 23, and didn't really finish my degree until I was 30, because during those years I had 2 small children as well. So I was probably 30 by the time and even then at 28 or 30, going in, getting my first job in an accounting firm, I felt like I didn't want to call myself an accountant. It took me 6 to 12 months. I was in a business, and they called me their accountant, and I'm just like, oh, am I allowed to say that?
You've got all these qualifications now.
And then even years later, actually calling myself like a virtual CFO, I'm like, am I allowed to call myself that? I guess I am. I'm doing, and so I actually Googled years ago, what does a CFO do? And all the thing, and I'm like, oh, I can do that, and I do that, and I do that. So yeah, I definitely do. And a speaker, even calling myself a professional speaker, it took me a while to, come to the fact that yes, you are a professional. And I joined the Professional Speakers Association, which I'm now the company secretary of
course.
and they said to me, no, so you're allowed to call yourself that, for sure. Yeah. So, but yes, definitely imposter syndrome, and just wondering whether someone's going to call you out and go, hey, you're not that.
How did you feel going back to study at 23? I know that doesn't sound old, going into a university environment. And it sounds weird because I think a lot of people now, they don't know what they want as their career. So I think now in university, it's not, your 18 to 21s in there. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I don't
25 years.
Okay, I can say, 25 years. So I've calculated the age now. What was it like back then being a mature student? Because it probably would have had a different landscape.
Yeah, well, I started off in TAFE and then I went to uni after that. So back then it was early 2000s, between 2000 and 2010 was sort of when I did it, 2008. Yeah, it was hard because, I dropped out in year 10. So I didn't get to do those high level sort of English and maths, although I was quite a good student. Maths and English were my best subjects. So going in to just going, all right, hang on, I'm just going to enroll in an advanced diploma in accounting and just do it. Yeah, it was quite confronting. But back then I think it was better because we had face-to-face. And I've started, trying to finish my MBA at the moment, and it's all online and it's very difficult. It's much more difficult now going back in the last few years than it was back then because we don't have the face-to-face interaction.
And also you don't have that peer support as much as you used to do, or even in a class to say that you're struggling, someone else is also struggling, and, either you can align yourself to help through the problem together. I know from back at Master Builders, we tried to go online for our courses during COVID and things like that. And it didn't really work. People wanted to be in the classroom. Sometimes it was the first time they'd been in a classroom since school. So they were really intimidated in that whole, is it going to be like school? And we were like, it's a totally different environment to school. So are you still in touch with people that you studied with?
No, not back then, no. Because I guess I was a mum too. Like when I was going to TAFE, so my babies, I used to drop them off at, parents' or grandparents' place. And of course, I didn't really probably make those relate. I couldn't because I just had other commitments. So I literally 2 days a week would go drive to TAFE, do my study, do my classes, and then the rest of the week I had a family, and so it was a challenge. But
I'm sure
I'm glad I did it. Yeah.
So when you went to TAFE, did you go back and try and do your sort of year 11, 12 maths, or did you go straight into your diploma?
No, I didn't. I think they did some entry level tests just to make sure you were at a year 11 standard, and they said I was. And so then I just went in. I mean, I don't know what the rules are now, but I literally just enrolled and just started doing it.
So after you left TAFE, what happened? What uni did you go to?
I did like a University of New England, which is in Armidale, and that was a correspondence. So I had to do like 4 postgraduate sort of subjects to get to the degree. And
so you really didn't have that uni experience?
Not really. No, I didn't. No.
But probably you were at the age where it wouldn't have benefited you.
I actually just did it so that I could get a tax agent license and a public practice certificate, which is what I needed for accounting.
So you were on a goal. So what was that your passion then back then? Was, did you have the passion of, I want to set an example to my children that this is where I want to go and what you can achieve?
I think there was a number of things. I think when I was a teenager, I was caught up in domestic violence, so for 4 years. And so that was a pretty hectic, rough time. When I got out of that and then I met my first husband and we had children, I just thought, I've got to go back to school. Like you were 23, I'm like, I've got no education really. I've worked in cafes and hospitality. But one of the driving forces, and I love numbers. Mum and Dad said to me, you love numbers, just go be an accountant. You're good at maths. I think one of the driving forces too was seeing my mum and dad not be great with money either.
Okay.
So mum and dad had a business for 30 years. And at the end of their working life, when they were 65, 67, they ended up with no money. They had no house, they had no super, their business was worth nothing. They probably had $100,000 or something like that out of a house they sold, but that was it. There was no, and when I got into my 20s and I could start to see, because I helped them with the books and stuff, I could start to see what was happening. They just racked up a lot of debt, and I just thought, I don't want to be, I just don't want to be like that. I don't want to get to my 60s and go, I've now got to struggle for every dollar when I'm older, because I'm obviously not going to be able to work as much as I can when I'm in my 20s. And so that was a driving force too. Not that accounting degrees actually taught me anything, Marissa, about wealth creation. I had to go figure that out myself. But I just thought, getting into the accounting is a good profession. And I knew that I'd never be out of work. So that was probably a driving force too. Yeah. And also, teaching my girls, I guess, they now see that I, went back to school and studied, and that you don't have to do something straight out of school if you don't want to. You don't have to know what you want to do at 18. It's okay to wait for a while to see. And both of my girls now have done that. They're 23 and 25, and I don't think either of them really knew what they wanted to do until they were 21. So
yeah. One of the things I find fascinating is that, and I'm not quite sure of our age differences, but when I sort of left school, it was like you had a job and you had a job for life. And that is not what it's like now. You can have multiple careers over the course of your working life and employment. So what does the future hold for Sarah? What's Sarah's plans?
I think now I love what I do. So virtual CFO work is helping people, not just with numbers, but I had a client the other week. She said to me, Sarah, do you do counselling sessions in with these CFOs? I said, of course I do, because she was just offloading about an employee that she'd employed for 160 grand a year, and they weren't up to scratch. They weren't stepping into their chief role, but just talking about the numbers and getting people to just understand and helping them see, like, hey, now I understand what's happening with my money. Now I understand, instead of them just lying awake at night wondering what's going on. And speaking is a big passion of mine. I love speaking, so I run lunchtime events and dinners in Adelaide. And even if there's only 10 people there, I just love getting businesses together and networking. And I think I'm just going to continue that. Virtual CFO space, I think, still needs some education around it, because it's an extremely valuable service for SMEs, but a lot don't understand or even know that they need it, because most people that come to me again, they go, I didn't know I needed a CFO. I thought my accountant and bookkeeper, but they're a different role. Accountants and bookkeepers do different things to what I do. I don't do what they do. They generally don't do what I do. And traditionally, CFO work has only been for the bigger companies. So think about big accounting firms like KPMG or Perks. But again, that's probably not accessible for SME sector. They're more doing it for the bigger business because of the price tag. So, that's what
there's one task that I have done, and I'm going to ask you what your definition of SME is, because whenever you ask someone, every time you ask a person, they always have a different what in their head is an SME. So in your world, what would you class as an SME?
Yeah, I know. If you look up legal stuff or governments or tax department, they'll probably tell you that it's 100 million or under. But really, in reality, is a $50 million business an SME? Probably not.
No.
So I think in our world, it would probably under 20 million, I would think, in the SME sector, and maybe you could put a staff number on it. It could be 20 or 50, but I would safely say under 20 mil is still an SME, not 100, I don't think.
No, I think I agree with that definition, and that's probably different wherever state you're in as well,
true,
which would probably have a different take on it. But I often find that it's always good to get a little bit of clarification on what you believe is an SME.
Yes.
So you've spoken about how you help businesses, but what kind of problems are businesses facing?
Well, I'll give you an example. I was working with a HR firm in the last couple of years, and just having a look into their MyOb system, just looking at seeing what was going on, because she kept saying to me, I'm having cash flow issues, which means one day her bank account's up here, the next month it's down there, and just like a roller coaster of having a lot of cash and then running out and then getting a tax bill and then it all runs out again, and just ups and downs. And I looked into her debtors system, so her customer invoices. And what MyOb or Xero or QuickBooks does is track how long it might take a customer on average to pay
your
you.
debtor days.
Debtor days, yeah. So one of hers I looked at, and I share this when I do some presentations, is I went in there and it said 632 days was the average days to pay. 1.7 years it was, Marissa. So if I come to your business, Marissa, and I go, look, can you give me some services? I'll pay you in 1.7 years. What are most people going to say? No. If I go to Telstra and go, look, I'm not going to pay my phone bill for 1.7 years. It's like, no. And this business had been operating for about 5 or 6 years, and it was an ongoing client that they billed, every month. But they just were so far behind on the invoicing. And I said to her, no wonder you're running out of cash.
So was it the invoicing that she was raising, or was it them not paying the invoices?
Them not paying. So they were paying, but they'd gotten so far behind in the past that the average days just blew out. So some of the invoices were 6, 12 months old. And because it takes an average over that time, it just kept getting higher and higher and higher. So they were paying, but never paying. There was
time.
Never paying on time. So that's one of the big things, and that's a huge cash flow issue.
But would that not just impact cash flow? So bank reconciliations for that, were they paying invoices that were, a newer date than what was old?
That was a big problem too.
Accountant, bookkeeping, finance department.
Extremely messy, and I helped her clean up some of it because, there was stuff that was just receipted from last year and then the new stuff, and we had to get remittance. I mean, another thing is getting source documents, like getting remittances from those companies as well, because otherwise we don't know what they're paying. That's a big issue too. But if you've got, and businesses not having a bookkeeper that's doing the right thing, or they're trying to do it themselves, not having a good tax accountant. Every business needs a good bookkeeper and a good tax accountant. Because those two things, if they're not sorted, I don't even work with people that don't have up-to-date. If they've got really messy books, I can't touch it because I can't advise on something that's not correct. I don't want to be advising on numbers that are wrong. So the first thing I'll do is send them off to a good bookkeeper to get them to fix it up.
Yeah. And do you have a referral network for that to help your clients?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So I've got a couple of accountants, and accountants refer to me. The ones that understand CFO work refer to me. Not all of them understand. They might think I'm stepping on toes, which I'm not. But they understand the business planning and the cash flow. And again, they probably don't have time to be doing that stuff.
So in the instance of talking about the debtor days and the bad payer, as a CFO, would you advise them on a strategy of maybe that isn't the best customer for them, and talking about how they manage getting out of that customer relationship while still sustaining their business?
Yeah, and in this instance, I think it was probably more of a case of just not paying attention to the detail. I think it was a good client, a good customer, but the director of that business just didn't have her eye on the ball in terms of that stuff. And so I just brought it to her and I said, look, these guys are really good to you. They're giving you a lot, but we've got to get them up to date with their payments. Otherwise, you need to stop services because this is really costing you. You're like their bank, and you're not charging any interest on a loan that you're giving them, really, because that's the reality of it. So I would advise to either, stop the relationship, or just, I think communication is just actually ringing these people up and saying, hey, look, we've got all this outstanding invoices. Can you pay? And again, this is a thing that a lot of owners don't do. They don't have anyone that's actually addressing the debtors issue, or an admin person that can get on the phone and just ring up or send an email. Some people aren't even doing that.
I think sometimes they think they don't want to damage that relationship, or sometimes they've had that customer for a very long time, or it could have been at the start of the business, and there's an element of loyalty. Did you get a referral to the business that wasn't paying?
Yeah, I should. Should I? Yeah,
because that would have been like a problem side of things. Do you have any other scenarios like that? Because obviously debtor days, and you can outsource your credit control if you don't want that to be an impact on your relationships.
Right,
I know my husband in the UK had his own business and actually did outsource the credit control.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that wasn't an area that he felt comfortable with.
No, that's right.
Or similar thing, it reduced the debtor days by probably about a third, which helped from a cash flow
perspective. You can do that. Have someone in-house or outsource it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Another one was she was only paying herself once a year. So her accountant had told her, look, just wait till the end of the year. It was good for him because if anyone knows about trusts or companies, we just get a distribution at the end of the year and it's all based on profits. But what was happening is this girl, she never knew where her business was at And she never knew whether she was going to have
12
enough.
months
Yeah.
retrospective.
And when she told me that, I said to her, you know, like, how does that make you feel? Because I thought, this is not a strategic business financial. This is like, how does that make me feel? She said, terrible, absolutely horrible. Because I never ever know where I'm at. And I'm always wondering if I'm going to have, let's say it's 50, 60, 70 grand at the end of that year to take and pay off my mortgage. And that's how she structured. I said, well, perhaps you need to start paying yourself weekly or monthly because it's a reward. You're slugging out. You're working full
12
time.
months of just working and working and working and then not necessarily knowing what.
Yeah. And again, that's why she came to me for help, because she just wasn't on, she had no budget, no cash. She just wasn't on top of anything. And then she was paying her taxes in advance. But she knew there was a gap, and she just knew that there was a better way of doing things. And that's why she heard me talk at an event. I talked about boosting business cash flow, and so that's why she came.
So, Sarah, if people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they be able to get in touch with you?
Well, you can go to my website, www.sarahreimann.com.au. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. Those are the two platforms I generally hang out on. All my events are on there too. I run events in Adelaide. There's a contact form, and get in touch there.
Okay, so I'm going to be really pedantic, and it's Sarah with a H.
Yes.
And Reimann, Reimann.
Yes, that's
Perfect.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry, just in case. No, it's okay. I can
Of
do
course,
that.
yeah.
I can do that. Thank you so much for coming on. I think that our audience is going to get a little bit more of insight and probably go and have a look at their debtor days or how they're being paid. And you've explained a little bit more about how the CFO role can help businesses and clarified an SME.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Glass Ceiling. If you've liked what you heard, please subscribe, as we'd love to have you as part of our community. We're grateful to our guests for sharing their inspiring stories and insights with us, and to our sponsors in making this podcast possible. This podcast was brought to you by Wavebreaker. Join us next time as we shatter the glass ceiling, one story at a time.